Hi, I'm here with Geoff Smith of Assurance Financial. He's our preferred lender at Maximum One Premier Realtors. And I've got some questions for Geoff today, and he's going to share his experiences and some of the life changes he's gone through. So, Geoff, I don't know if you want to say something before I start asking, but feel free.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm excited for you on your journey with this new book, Halftime Adjustments.
Yeah.
It's a really smart, and there's a lot of good advice in there for people, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. And thank you for inviting me here.
All right, thanks. Well, I want to start with take us back to 2007.
Yeah.
And kind of tell us, like, what did life and business look like for you back then?
So 2007 was a pretty good year for Geoff and Geoff and Brenda, and I had a construction company back then where, 2007 we'd 4 years of doubling revenues. I had really kind of started to feel like I'd established a presence and credibility in my industry. We'd built a company up from a small company, felt like I'd done all the right things, and felt like we were really on the path towards doing something really big.
Awesome. So when you started, you were doing handyman work and then eventually built a company doing the high-end remodels, custom homes. So how did you build that business from the ground up? So how did that start?
Yeah, so that started, I was a newspaper reporter, and Brenda and I had decided that it was time to make a change there very early on. And I had a friend who would, because I was a reporter, I knew what cities were going to do, I knew where they were going to make investments, and I had a friend who would said he would go buy houses where I told him to buy them, and then I would fix them up and flip them. And that's kind of how I transitioned there, and I started a handyman service. Really, I made myself the rotten wood king of Atlanta. Because number one, I had learned that every single house has rotten wood on it.
Absolutely.
And number two, nobody else was going to call themselves the rotten wood king of Atlanta. So that worked out well. My old paper gave me an ad, and I just started from the ground up, doing small stuff on people's houses, replacing rotten wood, driving up in my truck with a bunch of tools, and at night doing estimates. And then somebody would say, hey, can you do a deck? And then somebody said, hey, can you do a finished basement? And then can you do a kitchen? Can you do a master bathroom? And then next thing you know, by 2007, we were building custom homes. So it kind of grew organically that way.
And that was really smart, the Wood Rot King. I have not heard that one, but it makes so much sense because it is a catchy thing. And if I've got wood rot on my detached garage, I saw it yesterday. So it's like we all have it. So looking back now, the skills that you were developing when you were going through that process, how are they affecting your life now?
Yeah, so I learned, two of the biggest skills I learned in construction were preparation and process. So, if you're doing a big house remodel, for example, if you don't do a lot of preparation up front, you can get yourself into a whole big lot of trouble. On a new construction, it's one thing. You're building from the ground up. You may find a surprise when you start digging and pouring your foundation. But on a remodel, you got to figure out, what have all the other builders and remodelers done before I got here? If I'm going to take out a wall, what's in that wall? I need to know what's in that wall. So I prided myself on, I would tell my clients, you're not going to get any change orders out of me. I'm going to do my preparation, and if I'm taking out a wall, I know that there's either pipes in there or there's no pipes in there. I know if it's holding up weight. So I was very, very strong on preparation. That developed a lot of trust with my clients. And then on process, when you get into, you got to have good processes. When you're scheduling different subcontractors, you have to know what subcontractors need to go in what order, which kind of contractors can actually work at the same time. And then you've got all their schedules that they're dealing with. So just for example, even on scheduling subcontractors, you have to have a good process in place. And I developed a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of processes for doing the same thing every time. Because if you think you can just keep it all up here, you're going to get emotional about something, you're going to forget something. So I learned I have to create processes, and I have to follow those processes every single time in order to make sure I don't mess up and miss something.
So basically you're saying that systems and processes, they're important as much now as it even was then, right?
Exactly. So when I get into the mortgage world now, getting a good pre-approval is critical. Like if I do a bad pre-approval, we don't want to get into a loan and then all of a sudden start finding surprises when somebody's got earnest money at stake.
Yeah. So when 2008 happened, and we all know that was it was a bumpy time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
How exactly did that change your view on where you were going in the future?
Well, so 2008, 2007 was a great year, and all of a sudden we found ourselves in 2008, and it happened pretty quickly where we transitioned from doing very, very well to all of a sudden everything just disappeared. So it was really a struggle in 2008 to figure out what's happening, how long is this going to go on, and when do I need to make a change? Yeah. So in 2008, there was a lot of wondering, a lot of holding on too tight to the business that I'd had, and at times when I probably should have cut it loose.
So it was pretty emotional. You poured 7 years into something, and then.
Oh yeah, no, it was emotional, and the emotions probably got in the way of me making a good decision. I didn't want to let that company go, and I kept telling my subcontractors, "Hey, gang, in a year, this is all going to blow over. We're going to get all this business. Everybody else will have left," and I just kept holding on to it longer than I should have, and I probably should have transitioned a little bit sooner. But it was emotional for that reason, and then just as a family man, it was emotional. Because now I'm supposed to be providing for my family, and that has taken away from me. So that's a whole nother set of emotions that you have to deal with.
So when things weren't going well, a lot of people back then, I know, that was in business for themselves, they had to go and do what no business owner ever wants to have to do again. They have to go get a job.
Yep.
A job.
Yep.
So
yep.
What was that like, going from being your own boss, being a business owner? Tell us a little about what that next step was.
Well, you're 100% right. You're an entrepreneur, and you're in control. I like the idea of being in control of my destiny. And so once I ended up getting a job, and it was a printed circuit board manufacturing company, working for somebody, you're now at the behest of somebody telling you what to do every single day with what you're, and it is a transition to follow orders in that way. There was a joke when I became an entrepreneur that somebody said, "You're no longer a boss," and then I found out, or you no longer have a boss, and then I found out, all my clients are my bosses. So I traded one boss for 100 bosses, but at the same time, it was a whole lot different when there's one person there, telling you what to do every day and falling in line and trying to make sure that you're making them happy with what you're doing, as opposed to doing what you think is best all the time.
Well, at halftime adjustments, I talk about these halftime moments. It's these moments in your life where you feel like, okay, something's got to change, where you do evaluate. Can you tell us about what was that moment for you, now going from being an entrepreneur, owning your own business, to being an employee? At what point, being an employee, did you feel like, okay, it's time for another adjustment?
Well, it's fun. In reading your book, and that whole concept of halftime adjustments had me thinking about my life. And the first half for me was that construction world. Second half is my mortgage world, and those 4 years to me was a long 4-year halftime where I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? What's the rest of my life going to be like? And so when I got into that job, I knew I was blessed to have it at the time for my family. We needed that income, and I needed to stay there for a while to at least pad my resume before I could get some work history before I could go do something else. I knew it wasn't where I wanted to be. But once I had gotten some years of experience, I started to feel like, okay, now I've got a resume, and now I can maybe start looking elsewhere.
Wow. So Geoff, how difficult is it for someone who's been successful in like one field to become successful and begin all over in another field?
Well, it can be a tough deal, and it's a big lesson that was learned for me to be fluid, to go from where I had felt like I'd become an expert in construction and remodeling, and I knew the answers to all the questions. I mean, you're always learning, right? But I felt really confident to all of a sudden go into this industry, this printed circuit board manufacturing industry, where I had zero presence and zero credibility, right? And nobody knew who I was. And by the way, they didn't know I was in the room. It was like before you're in Cheers, where everybody knows your name, and then the next day you're in some bar where nobody even knows you're there and they don't know who you are. And so you've got to learn all this new information in this whole new industry, and you're the young guy, and it's a humbling experience, but also a very, very healthy one. It's very uncomfortable, it's very humbling, and it teaches you to be okay with being uncomfortable and being humble in what you do.
All right, and eventually, now you had told me that a childhood friend had opened a mortgage company. And how did that opportunity come about for you?
So my friend Damien had started the branch for Assurance Financial. His fraternity brother was a compliance officer in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he opened a branch there. And really, we were just out with some friends, and we talked about it. I was talking about my job, and he said, "Well, if you ever get bored, give me a call." And he was kind of joking. But it planted a seed in the back of my brain that just, mortgage banking. I was in a job where every second outside of my office was bad for my business. I had a national team of sales reps that I needed to be supporting. I had the manufacturing operation. I was in compliance and quality control. So I had to be in the office. But I'm really a community guy at heart. Like, I like to be involved in things. And that's what was missing. And so the more I started thinking about the mortgage stuff, going from a business to actually getting to work directly with people in some life-changing moments and getting to be a part of that experience, but also going out and being involved more in the community, it started in the back of my mind, and it just kept working its way to the front until eventually I started thinking maybe I need to make a change.
So once you made that change, at what point did you realize that, this mortgage lending thing's more than just a job?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that can be, like I said, getting to be involved with somebody that is in the middle of a life-changing experience. It's a whole different feel. When I'm business to business, I'm dealing with purchasing managers. Everything's very heady, and a lot of people that are just working 9 to 5. The mortgage thing, the more I thought about it, the more it just felt right. The more it just felt like a place that I wanted to be involved in, and that would get me excited waking up every day.
Wow. So another thing, so there's excitement with that, but what skills did you have to learn when it came to lending versus construction?
Well, here we go, starting all over again in an industry where zero presence, zero credibility, and zero knowledge. I had a general idea of how mortgages work because I had gotten one before, and when I was in construction, I worked through the lending process there. But it was, here we go back to the drawing board. I got to study all these. What is a Fannie Mae loan? What's a Freddie Mac loan? What are their guidelines? How do they apply to people? And how do I, if I don't give somebody good customer service, I'm going to lose sleep at night. Well, when I'm just starting out and I don't know what all the rules are, and somebody's asking me for a loan, it's a very unsettling feeling to not be the expert, not know if I'm giving them the best customer service. So it was a big scramble in the beginning just to learn the processes and just to learn all the rules and regulations, and then figuring out how to apply them to getting somebody a great experience and getting a mortgage for their house.
So that was 2013. Fast forward, now we're sitting in 2026. So that's 13 years.
Yep.
At what point during that 13 years did you feel like this is where I'm supposed to be? Because I know you've had to feel it to be in it this long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's longer than you was in the construction. It's longer than you were in all these other things you've talked about. So at what moment did you feel like, I know this is where I'm supposed to be?
So there were two moments, and both for different reasons. In 2017, I wrote my final check, and it wasn't really a check, I went online, but I paid off my final debt that I had accrued from 2008.
Wow.
2008, a lot of credit card debt, tax bills that were overdue. In 2017, I finally paid off my last debt, which told me financially, I felt like I'm in the right place. But then I had another client where right around just about a year before that, where she came to me with bad credit, and I told her, hey, over the next course of the next year, do this. and let's see if we can get your credit up. A year later, she called me back. Usually I never hear from them again. She called me back a year later, and we pulled her credit. And when I called her and told her she was pre-approved to buy her first house, she started crying over the phone. And when I got to go through that with her and then sit at a closing table and watch her shed tears again and be a part of that experience of her signing papers to buy her first house, knowing what she had been through, and I could of course relate, that was a moment where I felt like, I'm really able to help people in a meaningful way, and this was pretty cool.
So in a previous conversations when we've discussed things, you had mentioned, and this caught my attention, that you believe that God had kept your mind focused on the future more than your present when you're going through all this. Because when you're in the moment and you're in the present situation that's going on, it can be overwhelming. But you had mentioned that God helped you look to the future. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. And when you're in all that, and people had it a lot worse than we did going through 2008 and that time for sure, but it was, in my mind, I'm supposed to provide, and you feel this tremendous weight when you're not able to provide for your family in the way that you want to. And it's very stressful. So I was at church, and we had a speaker there, and you're better at scripture than I am, but he had two passages from Luke, and one was, Jesus is telling one of his disciples, was all this worrying going to give you an extra hour, right? Is it going to make you taller? Like, you're worrying about things that are out of your control.
Yeah.
And then the other passage was about one of his disciples wanted to go back and talk to his family before following Jesus. And he said, with one hand on the plow and looking backwards, you're of no service in the kingdom of God. And so it told me, stop worrying about what you can't control and put both hands on the plow and move forward. The only thing you can control in life is what you're going to do with your next step. You have no idea what's going to happen once that step lands. You have no idea how it's going to be, but there's no silver bullet and there's no magic lottery ticket that's going to fix everything now. Just focus on making that next step, Geoff, and after a while you'll make a bunch of good steps and you'll end up in a good place, and that's what happened.
And it brings me to a kind of a tough question, because we all face it when you're men of faith and you put your trust in God, is knowing, okay, these ideas in this direction I'm going, distinguishing, is this Geoff seeing this opportunity and feeling like it, or is God really leading me there?
Yeah.
That's a tough question, so I don't know if you've got an answer for it, because I know it's hard for me to know sometimes, is this really a God thing or is it a me thing?
And I assume God knows, and I just do what I'm supposed to do. And I don't, it's not for me to say. It's just for me to do, and that's kind of the way I feel about that. Like, I don't know if it's God making me do something or I'm doing something, but when you look back on things, everything kind of feels like it happens for a reason.
All right. Well, let's move on. So how different is the man who became a mortgage lender in 2013 from the businessman who was riding high in 2007?
Oh, yeah.
How have you changed since?
Well, definitely more humble. Definitely, I don't take anything for granted, at all. Everything could change tomorrow, and when you get into a rough time when something like that gets taken away from you, you feel like we moved from a nice house in Roswell to our tiny little rental house, and felt like we had a lot of material possessions taken away. And what you learn is, it pulled us together as a family, me and Brenda, right? And so one of the things you learn through that is that if things fail, I'm going to be okay. Right? If everything gets taken away, it's not going to be good. But if I lost everything right now, Samuel would have to probably start getting some student loans to go to college. But in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through it.
And that kind of goes to my next question was, what did losing your original business teach you about defining success?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a different perspective of everything now.
Absolutely.
And one of the things you didn't mention, but it came to my mind as you're talking, is, it's one thing to be broke, and it's one thing to grow up in poverty. But it's another to be wealthy and then be broke, because you know what you're missing. You know where you've been. And that becomes a real struggle, because it can give you the sense of, I have failed. I have not accomplished what I needed to accomplish. But there's a couple of ways that can go, isn't it? You can let it drive you down worse and take you to a place you don't want to be, or you can do as Geoff did, make some decisions, make halftime adjustments, right? And change your life. So next question is, if the crash had never happened and your construction company had continued growing, do you think you ever would have discovered your calling?
That's not for me to say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I have absolutely no idea, because that didn't happen that way. I would think that it probably would have, but I don't look back, right? I'm looking forward, and what's going to happen today is what matters. I do look back on it with a sense of pride in how things went down, that you're able to rebuild and restart again, and thankfully things turned out the way they did. But yeah, I have no clue.
So I know we're not trying to look back, but if you did look back at 2008 and how the crash, the things that put you and your family through, looking back now with the knowledge you have now, it's hindsight's 2020, right? Would you say those things happened to you or happened for you?
I have to say for me, right? Back then, I would have said this is all happening to me, right? I mean, you and I both grew up in a sports world, and in the sports world, when things go wrong, you're taught the first person you look at is yourself. What could I have done to make things better? And I'm sure I was going through that kind of stuff, but I'm sure also in the back of your mind, you're thinking, man, what have I done wrong to deserve this, right? And I'm sure those thoughts were going through my mind, and I've tried to kill them as much as possible, but they still just kept coming there. But now it was definitely, no doubt, everything happened for a reason.
So what did that difficult season give you that success couldn't give you?
It gave me a confidence that if things go bad, if things go wrong, we're going to regroup. It taught me to be a lot more fluid in life and expect change. Things are going to change that are out of your control. And really, it's about how do you deal with that change? You keep trying to do the same thing even though things are different, or do you make a change? And like you said in your book, you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater and change everything wholesale, but you need to be paying attention to what's going on so you can make minor adjustments to go with the flow and adapt to what's happening and grow with the change.
All right. Well, there may be someone watching this interview today, and they may be like thinking about they're making a change in their career, their finances, or something of that nature. So what would you tell that person that's maybe they're in a struggle, things aren't going well for them and their finances and their job or their career? Like, what advice would you give them?
Well, nobody's healthy when they're holding on to two ropes pulling in two different directions at the same time. And so whatever your situation you're into that's paying the bills, you need to pay attention to that and be good at that until you make a change. Making a change isn't something you can do half of what you're doing now and then half of the change. For me, when I was in my job that I wasn't thrilled being there, I still had to be amazing at that job, so that I could keep having that job, because I didn't have anything to fall back on. So my change came over the weekends and the evenings and during my lunch breaks. I had to put in extra time to focus on what is going to be my next move and planning that out. So make sure you're doing a good job. Make sure you're staying focused on what you're doing so you can keep getting paid. But also, it takes some extra time that you're going to have to spend outside of work to focus on making the change. It's a very practical thing.
Yes. Yeah. So now thinking about when you're in that job and you're still fighting to try to keep your dream alive, when do you think, at what point would you feel like it's time to make an adjustment?
I think you need to look at, I'm a big numbers don't lie, emotions do.
Yeah.
And every year in December when we typically historically get kind of slow. I look at all of them. Where are my jobs coming from? Where am I investing my time and money? And if that's not generating revenues, I either need to approach it from a different angle or get rid of it. Right? So you need to look at your numbers. Keep good track of good numbers, and let those numbers kind of tell you if something's working or not. From that perspective. Emotionally, that's different for every single person. If you can handle a job, make sure you're not a grass is always greener on the other side kind of person, because that can be easy. When things get tough, it's easy to say, maybe I need to go do something else just because it's tough. But emotionally, if you've decided it's time to make a change, number one, look at the numbers and make sure the numbers are telling you the real story. But number two, don't be afraid to make that change. If you really feel like it's something you have to do, it's going to be okay. It's going to be hard. It's going to be starting all over again, but have faith that it's going to work out.
Yeah. And there's kind of a correlation to, we're talking about, career and work and things, but buying a home is very similar. You take someone that's renting, and if you were talking to a renter and they're like, well, when do I know it's time for me to buy a home? Like, when is it okay and a good time for me to go buy that home? Well, what I've learned through the years, and you've probably said it to me before, is the best time to buy a home is when you can afford to buy a home. Like when you have the funds, you buy it. You don't, like for me, when I make a purchase on a property, I don't worry so much about the interest rate and all these factors that I have zero control over. What I do have control over is my own finances. And if I can afford to buy today, I need to buy today. If I can't afford to buy, it don't matter if the interest rate's 1%. If I can't afford to buy, I don't buy. But if I can afford to and it's 6, 7%, then I need to buy. I know that's not part of our discussion today, but I just saw the correlation when you're in a job and the numbers are showing, you can afford to leave this job and pursue this, then it's time.
Right.
And if they don't, then it's not time.
Right.
All right. What would you say to someone who knows they need a change in careers, but they're afraid that everything they've spent years learning is wasted? Like they've been in a career that they maybe even went to college for. They spent money on a degree. They've got all these skills, but they're not happy. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, those skills, it's been amazing to me what kind of skills from my past that I've used in the mortgage world today. Everything you have learned is valuable. There are basic lessons that are inherent with every single job that you have. All the technicalities of the actual job and what you're doing, those are things that you can learn. So, if you really feel like it's time to make a change, don't be afraid of it. Know it's going to be hard. It is not going to be easy.
No.
But you've got to be okay with being uncomfortable. You've got to be okay with being the guy who isn't the expert in your field anymore. And you've got to be okay with rolling up your sleeves and just doing all the little tiny things. You got to drop your pride a lot. That's a big thing. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of people who make that adjustment. They can't drop their pride enough to go out begging for business anymore. And that's something that people have to learn when they make that change.
And the pride one is a great point, because I have seen people start a business and the business isn't going well for years, but their pride won't let them move on.
That's right.
And eventually, they either lose everything and their pride gets ripped from them,
right,
or they lay it aside and make an adjustment. So thinking back, right now, if you could go back to 2008 and talk to the younger version of yourself, knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself?
Well, this kind of goes back to, I'm not sure I would. Number one, I'm not sure that guy in 2008 would have listened to me, But number two, I kind of feel like I had to go through a lot of that stuff to kind of be who I am today. but certainly there's some things I could have told him. And one of the biggest things is, hey, it's time to move on, buddy. The economy ain't coming back. I've seen the history here. It's going to go on for a while. You need to immediately adjust and go do something else. Stop trying to hang on to that business because it's done. That would have moved me forward several years. But yeah, for the most part, you know, I'm not sure. I think that guy had to go through what he went through to get to me where I am now.
And that is hard because
Yeah.
we all can look back at our lives and see those same things. And it's like, yes, it was hard going through it, but gosh, I love where I'm at now and I appreciate it so much more.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd have
because
been
of
the same
that.
person right now. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm perfect now by any stretch of the imagination or that my story is all that unique, but I definitely feel a sense of pride in going what we went through and learn what we learned.
So you may have answered this just now, but I'm going to ask in case there's just another one, is like, what is one mistake that you would tell people that when they are going through a major career transition, like what's one mistake you would avoid going through it? And I know there's probably many, but if you could just pick one.
Well, you know, one is, you know, in your mind before you do something. My biggest problem is I think about all the positive outcomes of it, and to me, and I'm like, wait, I'm going to do this. And like when I got in the mortgage business, I said, "There's my marketing plan. Man, this is all I got to do to get business, and I'm going to do this." And paint a little bit too rosy of a picture of how it's going to be, and then you get into it and realize all the hard work that has to come with it, and then nothing can prepare you for that. So I think part of the mistake is just make sure that if you're looking at all the positive outcomes of making the change, make sure you also look at the possible negative outcomes and weigh those things off of each other. Not to the point where you scare yourself, just really make sure you're being sober in your mind about what you're going to do and being honest with yourself.
All right, so I'm going to ask you one more thing. I'm going to have you finish this sentence for me.
Okay.
All right, sometimes the thing that feels like the end of your story is actually
Just the beginning,
just the beginning.
right?
All right, and then finally, my last question then would be, what does halftime adjustments mean to you? Because you've made multiples. You may even be in overtime right now.
Might be in overtime right now. You're right, or maybe a different game or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you look at life, you know, and you compare it to that football game, you know, everything we're doing growing up, going to high school and college, that's like the pregame, right? You're looking at the videos of the other team, and then you go out into the real world and you start, and you learn, okay, this game's going a little bit differently than I thought. We thought this play would work, but maybe it's not working. So now we got to do this, and so the first half of your life is really just learning what this whole market and life and industry and work and life is all about. And halftime is when you say, okay, I've learned what this game is about, and now what do I want to do with it? And for me, it was a 4-year, you know, I got kicked into halftime. I didn't want to go to halftime.
Yeah.
I got kicked into it. But I spent those 4 years setting up my second half. Second half is coming back going, okay, I know now I've learned a little bit about what this whole thing called life is all about. And now I'm going to go into the second half and I'm going to do it right.
That's awesome,
Does
Geoff.
that help?
That helps.
Yeah.
That helps. So it's been a great conversation with Geoff today. I really hope that you gained some knowledge from our questions and answers, and really I hope that, I'm sure there's people going to be watching this that you've had your own halftime adjustments, like you've had where you've made some major changes, and hopefully we all learn from these transitions. And I don't know about you, I'm going to guess that Geoff feels like I do about this. We have a successful real estate business going right now. He's got a successful lending business going. But I really feel like because of our past experiences, if something happened and those went away, that we've been through enough and we've grown enough professionally and through our faith that we would just reassess things and take a time out for a halftime and come up with a new plan. Because that's what it's all about. It's about making adjustments. And if you've been alive for the last 2 or 3 years, obviously we have, you've seen how technology's changed. And if we're not making adjustments, we're going to get left behind.
Yep.
And pretty much any industry out there. So thank you for joining us today. If this video has been a help to you, and if you think anyone else in your sphere could benefit from it, please share the video with them, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time on Halftime Adjustments.
Take care.